R.C. Mazumdar, he approached Nehruji and he told him, now that we are free, let's write our history in our own way. That time, who was the first education minister? Maulana Azad. Okay. So he did not like the concept note and he said this cannot be done. Why he did not like the concept note, and he shared it with Nehru and Nehru said no, this cannot be done. So what he did was, he called his friend Tara Chand, who was from Prayagraj, then known as Allahabad, and who had done Mughal history. So if you read our history books, 4 pages are given for 4,000 years of history. 600 to 800 pages are given to 600 years of history, and another 300 to 400 pages given to 90 years of Mughal British rule. And Indira Gandhi followed the same, you see. He said, he goes to the NCERT and says that remove that Aurangzeb destroyed this mandir, so-and-so destroyed this mandir, and Mughals did this, forceful conversion. History book mein nahi aana chahiye. He says, no, this will create friction among the Hindus and Muslims. And Indira Gandhi had her way and they started changing textbooks. Simultaneously, she called in Aga Khan and got the Aga Khan Foundation listed here. And their objective was that in schools you have to propagate the great Mughals, etc. Those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. If our politicians had read the Mahabharata, our country would never have been divided into India and Pakistan.
Due to the lack of evidence in public domain, we are considering our Itihas as mythology. So today I want to proudly present Miss Neera Mishra ma'am, who has taken this huge responsibility to teach the young generation about the Itihas, and she is the founder of Draupadi Dream Trust, which aims in better understanding of our ancient religious texts like Mahabharata and Vedas. Hello ma'am.
Hello, namaskar.
Thank you ma'am. I want to ask what sparked your interest in finding these things about our history.
Okay, so I'll begin with what you said. Things like what you said, I heard, are religious texts.
Yes, ma'am.
In Bharat, we follow a Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, Dharma means principles or rules and regulations for a good life in every aspect. We never had anything called religion. So we do not have religious texts, we have spiritual texts, we have sacred texts, and we have itihasa. Our itihasa are sacred texts to us. Why they are sacred? Because they are the roots of where we come from, who we are, and what is our role in life for that. So in this regard, what sparked my interest in unearthing, digging deep, finding out the reasons why people call our itihas, our history. See, the word itihasa means as it happened. Itihasa, as it happened. And we were fooled by our colonial rulers into believing that we are horrible documenters. We never documented anything and we never had a sense of history, which was very disturbing because I come from a background where we have centuries of linkages to Itihas. I am from the land of Kampilya Samrajya, which was a huge kingdom spreading from Saket, that is Ayodhya, to River Beas. Later on, due to the cousins having, not getting along, it became Kuru and Panchal. So I am from the Panchal area. Panchal area was the land of Vedic learning. It is also the land where we have, they formulated how to write the Vedas, the format for structuring the Vedas. And many of our, right from Karm Kand to Ayurvedic book Charak Samhita to Shushruta Samhita, I mean so many books of knowledge, the Upanishads, the first version of Kama Sutra, they were all there, and the rulers used to be philosopher kings. We've had a tradition of rulers who are knowledgeable, who have the knowledge of the Brahmand. So this is what's made me very disturbed, that people are considering our itihas as not itihas. And one of the main reasons was, in fact, two main reasons. One is that towards the 6th, 7th centuries, we started getting plundered and our books getting destroyed. Then somebody told those invaders, oh, don't, if you just destroy their books, doesn't matter, because they keep everything in their head, because their brains are so developed. So they started killing people. Now, going through that position, many people, they went into the interiors with their books, whatever knowledge they had. So you will find many people living in the interiors. What another thing that happened was that we got completely disconnected from our Gurukul system, our systems of learning.
Rulers, you are talking about the Mughal rulers?
I'm
and
talking
colonial-
about invaders first.
Okay.
So first, the invasion disconnected us from our own regular systematic of teaching, of getting knowledge, because we had this system of brahmacharya where from the age of 6 to 8 the child is put into education till about 20 years. So he becomes like, completely devoted to brahmacharya, to education, acquiring knowledge and skill. And then comes the grest where he gets married and settles down. Okay. So this whole connection was completely Then we were taken over by the colonial rulers. Now what the colonial rulers did was that they came from a civilization which didn't understand depth of history. For them, the world started 4000 BC. Everything happened. Before that, there was nothing. When they came here, they were finding inscriptions which were like more than 4000 BC. They were finding artifacts which were dating back to thousands and thousands of years. It's just by chance that they sort of, the Harappan civilization erupted because they were trying to do some, construction, and they found all this. The whole city came up, What they did was, as Macaulay had said, that now that we have come here and we have to rule them, they started teaching, they created their own system of education, because they needed two types of people in India. They needed white collar jobs and blue collar jobs. Both will be at their mercy and work for them. In terms of education, they made, our texts were all in Sanskrit, mostly Sanskrit or traditional language. What they did was that Sanskrit texts and our traditional literature texts were taught only as philosophy or as kavya, literature. The history and geography in it was completely submerged, not talked about. So for almost 5-6 generations, people, even today when I talk to people who are in Sanskrit tradition and they have their Sanskrit centers all over, you ask them to read, they will only tell you about the philosophy, and they will only tell you about, it's like, it's a beautiful kavya, kya sundar kavita hai, mahakavya hai. वो महाकाव्य क्यों है, ये इन्होंने जानने की कोशिश नहीं करी. So our methodology of documenting history was different from the methodology used by the Western people. So one, they restricted the knowledge of itihasa that was embedded in our text because it was not taught. They imposed their version of history, their understanding of history, and when they did that, they could not understand that our history was written in a methodology at a time when there were no printing press. Everything was verbal. So Smriti and Shruti, so they would be orally. So it was oral tradition, and whenever a child went into education, he was given his identity was that he's got into brahmacharya with the Janev. Everybody wore a Janev. It's a misnomer that only Brahmins wore Janev. Even women wore Janev. And then they were also given the Gayatri Mantra. Now the Gayatri Mantra has been scientifically proven after 20 years of research to develop the brain. It does 3 things that a computer hardware or software needs. sort of, it increases the capacity of a brain, the memory of your brain, and the processing speed of your brain. That's why they were given the Gayatri Mantra. Now, so everything was dissemination orally. Much later, at the time, I think of Veda Vyasa was the first one who started. He first documented, divided the huge Vedas into 4 sections. Okay. Then there were these 18 Puranas, the 18 Mahapuranas, which he again put them down on that, and they would use palm leaves, you see. So he is one of, we call him the Maharishi. And he is the one who also wrote the greatest Granth of all times after learning the Vedas. Because if you're bifurcating the Vedas into 4 sections, obviously you are deep into it, knowing what is there. And then the Puranic. He was a fantastic astronomer and knowledge of our Adhyatma. Now, all this was getting absolutely unknown to people. So, people, like as you said, are religious texts. Our texts are not religious, they are sacred. But they are a narration in the form of stories. So, one is that oral tradition, and we never wrote his story. What is history? His story, perspective of the male. Because in Western societies, it was till even 1924 that the women got the right to vote. Okay, so they never considered women as a part of equality. So there was history, ours was not history. Ours was everything as it happened. So we started telling everything with the help of stories. It did 2 things. And the stories were also told in a poetic form. So a special language was developed. So whenever there's a jingle or a lyric, you remember. And whenever there's a story, you remember. And you don't have books to mug. So that was the methodology used, so that the children from right young age till, as they grew old, they could remember every part of history in a way that is like, not like today's generation where you have to just open the book and mug. Okay. So now, that is why I got into this, because I grew up in an environment, in my house we had all this, but I studied in a convent, hardcore Irish nuns. And we were taught all this, and as I was growing up, my second subject was political science. When I was reading political science also, everybody talked of mythology, everybody talked of, that Bharat had nothing, as if everything the West is giving us, the civilization, which I found was not the right thing. And that is why I somehow, actually the reason, that is the reason, but how I got into it is a pure accident.
Okay.
Because I started my career as an entrepreneur. I was chosen by SIDBI. I had done business administration, I had done English honors, MA in English, B.Ed, because my idea was to start an institute, educational institute. And I was like trained at FICCI, Federation of Indian Chambers, and that's how where my EDP ke baad I started my business as a as a business entrepreneur. But then in one of the research visits to Jaipur for FICCI, I had a massive accident. So literally an accident. All this was at the back of my mind, especially about how women are treated. Because as a single woman, the way I was like looked up as if, how is she successful? What does she do to be successful? So when you are young, energetic and doing success, people started raising. So I used to wonder, and I used to remember my grandmother telling me, Draupadi was a great woman. She never laughed at Duryodhan. She never said Andhe ka beta anda, and she was very powerful. And I used to say, but why do people say wrong things about her? Why are they blaming her for so many things that she's not done? So all these thoughts were in my mind, and then this accident connected me to my ancestral land, the land of Draupadi. And for 6 months, I was in bed. Both my legs were plaster. My face was like broken like a black football. So when you're going through the trauma, and in that trauma, you are sort of going back into your ancestral place to do. My father said, you must go and do puja there because you have been saved. There is some greater purpose in God that He wants you to do, so you have been saved. So then I went to the land of Draupadi. I sort of, I said, look, the story of Draupadi needs to be told. How can it be told unless we revisit our history, understand ourselves first what is the truth, and then tell the story. So that's why this whole process of diving deep, trying to know what is the real facts of history, not getting taken away by the I would say the embellishment of our, they'll take one fact and embellish it and make it look like true. So that's what made me get into history, so that I could try my best in my humble little way to bring out facts of the past, because I personally feel if you nourish the roots of your civilization, then the tree of civilization can reflourish and give fruits, which we have been deprived of for many centuries now. And it is time we get that. And gradually I was also analyzing one more thing, that whatever is embedded in our sacred texts had gone through the route of Arab countries to Western countries. They were decoding, they were using it as their work, even our sciences, our, the theory of gravity, making the batteries, anything that you're talking about. They were using it and trying to say that it is their invention, whereas actually they took it from our books. So all these little things, incidents. So this, what really triggered was this accident where for 6 months when I was in bed, I couldn't speak because my face was broken. And introspection made me realize that why not do something which will be more for the benefit of our nation and the people to understand themselves. Because it is said that if you want to know yourself, you have to know your history.
Ma'am, you mentioned that the colonial rule tried to erase our history, and they taught it as philosophy. So, ma'am, what was the motivation behind it?
See, they taught, I would not say they taught our history as philosophy. What I would say is that our books of Itihas contain the geography, the history, the philosophy, and even art, culture, everything is embedded. Okay. What they did was they put all focus on philosophy and as literature. Okay. And they did not teach it as history because they could not understand themselves that, Their motive was very simple. As Macaulay has himself said in the Parliament of Britain, if you want to control or rule over a nation, first thing you should do is to destroy their culture and history. He basically used the word culture, but culture is integral to history. Our culture comes from our rich history. If we didn't have a rich history, we wouldn't have a rich culture. So their motive was to make us feel lower than them, to make us feel dependent on them, to make us feel that they are the Gora people. Not only they are Gora, but they are the most advanced people, and we are the most backward people. So in order to camouflage and rule over us, this was the method that they used.
So, ma'am, you have researched deeply about these topics, and you have authored as well as co-authored many books, like Connecting with the Mahabharat, Mahabharat Manthan, and Ganga, the river of Sanatan civilization, and Indraprasth Revisited. So, ma'am, can you please explain while you were doing your findings, what was actually the geography of Bharat or India?
See, when we talk about Bharat in our ancient texts, it's very clearly mentioned. Jambu Deepe, Bharat Khande, Aryavarte, and then you give the wherever located you are. I mean Indraprastha, Indraprasth Kshetre, Aaj, Ashwin Mash ki, today is the second Navratra, है ना? शुक्ल पक्ष की द्वितीया के दिन हम आपके साथ वार्तालाप कर रहे हैं. So the geography of Bharat basically was connected to, there were, our Vedas describe 7 continents and 7 oceans. So it was limited to the Jambu Deep. The Jambu word comes from Jamun because it was full of Jamun trees, you see. So Bharat was a cultural entity, a nation with binding with common cultural and history. So if you will see today, the whole of Southeast Asia, even Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Sikkim, Sikkim of course is Tibet, I'm sorry, all these, Burma, they were all parts of Bharat. A lot of parts of Russia, a lot of parts, Uzbekistan, all these parts, Kyrgyzstan, they were all parts of our larger Jambu Deep, as described in our texts. Now, the issue is that we, the Britishers, first of all, we were getting invaded, so even Persia was a part of Bharat. They were the first to be separated. Persia became, the Parsis and all, and they also worship fire. We worship fire. So then the Mughals started breaking us slowly, and then the Britishers did a final thing कि श्रीलंका को अलग कर दिया, बर्मा को अलग कर दिया, थोड़ा करके इन्होंने अलग कर दिया.
Part by part divide.
Part divide कर दिया, piece by piece उनको हटाए ताकि इनको मालूम भी नहीं पड़ रहा है. And because they were ruling us, they were overpowering us, they had controlled us. And our people, we were so enslaved that we were helpless. But it is the credit of Sanatana Dharma that despite thousands of years, we are the only oldest living civilization. So the geography of Bharat that you asked is very well described in the Ramayana. The whole trail of Ram is described, where all he went. In the same way, in the Granth Mahabharat, then they describe the Jambu Deep. In fact, in one of the shlokas of the Bhishma Parva, Sanjay is telling the Dhritarashtra, he says that it is from the Brahmand, the earth looks like this. So there are these 2 people, leaves, and then there's the 2 rabbits. So when you reverse, just like you see your face in the mirror, in the same way the universe reflects, and majority, and all this land area is full of forest and Ayurvedic plants, and then the rest is water. And now when we see the map of our of the world, it's exactly the way it has been described, you see.
Leaves and rabbit.
Leaves and 2 leaves and rabbit. And the leaves of people.
People leaves.
People ka leaf ka ek particular shape hota hai. So the geography of Bharat was very vast. And today we still find landmarks of it everywhere. Even in Angkor Wat is the largest temple of Ramayana and Mahabharata. If you go there, the walls are full of the story of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Bali is the place where you are taught how to be a Brahmin, because you could not be a Brahmin by birth. Brahmin is a person who has the knowledge of the Brahmand, who understands the Vasudeva Kutumbakam, who understands the Prakriti, because from Prakriti came our Sanskriti. And if you understand Prakriti and Sanskriti, then you are able to understand Vasudeva Kutumbakam and rule in a way that everybody is a part of us and we have to live for each other. Not you are my commodity, the river is a commodity, the plants are a commodity. No, not that way. So that's the huge, we have this Jambu Deep basically. And as I said, it was a cultural because they all followed the same culture. What was that? So we always call it Bharat. Na?
Yes.
So Bharat has very interesting meaning. I thought you were going to start with asking me what is the meaning of Mahabharat. So Bharat comes from one is the King Bharat, who laid down these rules and regulations, strict, where we should be working for the Samaj. A ruler is supposed to be samarpit for the Praja, and everybody in the Praja is his putra. Bharat also means, Bha comes from Surya, the light of knowledge, and Rath, you know what it is, the vehicle. So the land which is the vehicle of light and knowledge is Bharat. So that Sanskriti, those lands which follow this concept of knowledge, concept of living in tune with nature are Bharatiyas. So we were all Bharatiyas because we followed, and as I said that one of the kings was known as Bharat who propagated. So everybody looked up to him also because it was laid down in its principles. That's how this whole story about in the great Granth evolves,
So you mentioned that in Mahabharata and Ramayana, our geography is explained in detail.
Not only Ramayana and Mahabharata, in the Rig Veda, the Nadi Shukta describes the different rivers, names the rivers starting with Gange, Jamune, Saraswati, etc., all the major rivers, and it is the key to the sacred geography of Bharat. So wherever these rivers are, because every civilization developed on the banks of rivers. So wherever these rivers are spread, all those areas are the geographical landmarks of Bharat. The Rig Vedas, Nadi Shukta very well describes it.
So, ma'am, is it a myth or a truth that you should not keep Mahabharat Granth at your home, or else it causes fights in home or a Mahabharat sort of environment in the home?
No, this is the biggest fraud on us. You see, the word Mahabharat, does Maha mean war?
No.
Did Bharat mean war? I just explained what Bharat means. Bharat means the light of knowledge, or the King Bharat, you can say, or the places that followed the rules and regulations of Bharat. So Maha means great, Virat, Vishal. So the story, so Mahabharat means the story or the narration or the itihas. Right in the beginning, Veda Vyasa says, this is itihasa. Okay. And when he says this is itihasa, that means it is the history of the large area called Bharata, the Vishal Bharata, the great Bharata, which follows the rules and regulations, the knowledge created here. And it is also the land of, as we said, vehicle of knowledge. So Mahabharata encompassed the whole thing. Where does the word ladai or the war or the, everything comes? So what happened is this, that this story of Mahabharata was very popular. And by the time the rule of Akbar came here, at that time, Akbar was very young when he took to the throne, and he had a lot of cronies around him and all that. And so he got into he said, if I have to rule here, I need to be able to understand their culture. So he started he had this Ibadat Khana in Fatehpur Sikri, where he would call people from different sects, different faiths, and he would understand what is it. So when he came to know about the Granth of Panchatantra, Mahabharata and Ramayana, he decided to translate them. So when he decided to translate them, since he was not educated, he used a lot of pictorial language. One second thing, since he was wanting to rule over India and he knew that he had to understand war strategies, he started focusing on the war aspect. Now, when we say कि महाभारत घर में नहीं रखनी चाहिए, the normal reason given is because Mahabharat is a book of ladai, a book of yudh, war. Do we ever say Ramayana ho jayegi? No. In Mahabharat, there are 18 days of war. In Mahabharat, out of 1 lakh shlokas, not even 10,000, not even 1/10 are devoted or describing the war. So 1/10. And in Mahabharat, we get to know one of the greatest books or the teachings of the world, the Bhagavad Gita. So how can a book giving us the greatest knowledge be a book of war? Secondly, each section of Mahabharat is known as Parva, celebration. We never celebrate a war. Okay. Now, आई एम सेइंग रामायण हो जाएगी, क्यों नहीं कहते हैं? रामायण में 40 days का वॉर है. देन दे से ओ भाई भाई लड़े थे. विभीषण और रावण भी भाई थे, वहां भी भाई भाई लड़े थे. सुग्रीव और बाली भी भाई थे, वो लोग भी लड़े थे. Why don't we say that? Why we did this was because when Akbar translated the book Mahabharat, he concentrated only on understanding the war strategies used by the Kauravas and Pandavas. So he concentrated on 10% of the book, taking bits and pieces from here. When he translated this book, he named it the Book of War. He called it Razam Nama. Razam Nama. Nama is the story and Razam is war. Okay. So he translated and called. And if you will see that most of the things, even the cover, most of the things were all about war, all war things.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened is once he got this book ready, he took 4.5 years and spent a lot of money. He had 5 Sanskrit scholars, 5 Persian scholars, artists from Persia to illustrate to him the story because he was not so educated. He was so pleased with it that he started distributing this book to his nobles, to his war, the commanders थे, to his sons that learn about these strategies. Suddenly, it's this popular, it became so well known that everybody was talking about the Mahabharata is a book of war. Mahabharata is a book of war. So, the book that is, and in the preface to this book, the original translation copy is today lying in the Jaipur City Palace Museum. So anybody go and see that book. It is lying there. In the preface to the book, both the translators, one of them, the Abul Fazl and Badauni, they were used by him. They say Akbar wanted to translate this book because he knew that it is the most sacred book for Hindus who read it every day in every home because it is a book of great knowledge. So you dent that connectivity to reading a book of great knowledge on a daily basis. What better way of dominating a person or defaming a person? Okay, so we started since once we've already disconnected with our itihas, our normal system of studying. Secondly, suddenly it becomes known as the book of war, the book of war. So people suddenly said, oh ho, इसको घर में नहीं रखना चाहिए, इसको घर में नहीं रखना चाहिए, लड़ाई हो जाएगी. अरे सदियों से लड़ाई नहीं हुई, घर में लोग रखते थे. And it is mentioned in the book, you see. So it is a great misnomer. It is the most sacred Granth. It's a proud document of Bharatiya Itihas that tells you your 4 Purushastra, Arth, Kam, isn't it? You know that 4 Purushastra, Dharma, Moksha.
Okay.
If you follow, Arth is you need to earn, Kam, you need to work, okay? And you have to do dharmic way, in a principled way. Then only you will reach moksha. तो जो किताब हमें ज्ञान देती है जीवन शैली के लिए, it tells you how to live a purposeful life, how to be karma yogis. How can that book be ever inauspicious? It is the most auspicious book, and we are so proud that it is the largest book of the world. इतनी बड़ी कोई ग्रंथ कभी नहीं लिखा गया. So I think it's a great misnomer, and it is time that people understood that Mahabharata is a book which needs to be preserved in every home. Because, see, in both the Granths, whether it is Ramayana or Mahabharata, there was a woman that was denigrated, and that is why the fight happened. But brothers fought on both sides against each other. So why should you defame this book and not the other? So this is just a ploy by rulers, like colonials used the ploy of teaching only as philosophy so that they forget their history. And here they said, okay, they won't forget the history, but let's distort their history. So they distort the history.
Ma'am, after colonial rulers, why there were not enough efforts to restore our history? When
Yes, that is a very valid question. This is a question that was a burning question in the mind of the greatest historian of the time of our independence. That was R.C. Mazumdar. R.C. Mazumdar, he approached Nehruji and he told him, now that we are free, let's write our history in our own way. So Nehru said, fine. You make a document. He made a committee and he made him the director of the committee, R.C. Mazumdar from Presidency College, Calcutta. What happened when he made the document? That document, the concept note, obviously he gave it to the Education Ministry. That time, who was the first Education Minister? The Maulana Azad. Maulana Azad. Now, Maulana Azad was not had a formal education. He was from that madrasa type of education. Secondly, he was a second generation in India because his father had come somewhere in the early 20th century to Bharat from Arab countries. So, it was all a domination of that. So, 5 continuous education ministers were Muslims. Okay. So, he did not like the concept note and he said this cannot be done. Why he did not like the concept note, and he shared it with Nehru and Nehru said no, this cannot be done. Because R.C. Mazumdar said we are fighting for a freedom for 650 years. So, they said no. So, what he did was he called his friend Tara Chand, who was from Prayagraj, then known as Allahabad, and who had done Mughal history. So, the whole idea was to focus our knowledge of history about medieval period. So, if you read our history books, 4 pages are given for 4,000 years of history. 600 to 800 pages are given to 600 years of history. And another 300 to 400 pages given to 90 years of Mughal British rule. Britishers took charge in 1857 and they left in 1947. So, formally they did not even complete a century of rule. But all we hear is their rule, all we hear is Mughal rule. And another thing was that all the wars we won, all the years and years of struggles that we had with these people were not highlighted. Only the Mughals, the great Mughals, the organizers, Mughals, this, they came as people who were absolutely invaders, ruffians. They used our people, dominated and scared them, and used them to understand our way of knowledge, and then started ruling over here. So, that is the biggest problem in our society, that we were not able to do. But R.C. Mazumdar did not give up. When Nehru immediately dissolved the society and he said this cannot be done, R.C. Mazumdar immediately contacted all his scholars, because he had already contacted the scholars once the committee was made. He said, now the situation is a challenge for us because Nehru has appointed a person who is going to dominate Mughal history. We have to talk about our history. His book, The Freedom Struggle of India, is written in 3 volumes. And it was not made a public a university document. R.C. Mazumdar.
Maulana Azad.
Sorry? Nehru had appointed Maulana Azad was the education minister. Yeah. So, Maulana Azad stopped it. The same thing happened with Archaeological Survey of India, which I will tell you later, that on the one hand, Mughal history was taught. And our history was not taught in, so it was read informally. Okay. It is now gradually in the last about 8 to 10 years that we are unearthing all these things. My article, The Tale of Two Cities. Second, and Indira Gandhi followed the same, you see. That when the Congress broke up in the 60s, 1969 I think or something like that, she was almost losing. So they started the appeasement policy. And she said that she appointed this one chairman for the NCERT committee for making textbooks. And he said he goes to the NCERT and says that remove that Aurangzeb destroyed this mandir, so and so destroyed this mandir, and Mughals did this, forceful convention. History book mein nahi aana chahiye. So this gentleman Bairappa, he's still alive. Bairappa, he's still alive. He's in Bangalore. He has also written a book called Parv. on Mahabharata. So he said, I cannot do that. I cannot destroy history. I mean, I can only tell you facts. He says, no, this will create friction among the Hindus and Muslims. He says, no, we're talking about Akbar did some good things. We're talking about Aurangzeb did some bad things. Whoever did good, we are saying. Whoever did bad, we are saying no. He was also removed from the committee, and Indira Gandhi had her way, and they started changing textbooks. Simultaneously, she called in Aga Khan and got the Aga Khan Foundation registered here. She created something called INTAC, made Rajiv Gandhi a pilot, its first chairman. And their objective was that in schools, you have to, INTAC, in schools you have to propagate the great Mughals, etc. And Aga Khan, at that time, Archaeological Survey of India, now it is under Ministry of Culture separately, at that time it was under Education. So, they were told that you will tie up with Archaeological Survey of India, and they started transforming all the monuments of Bharat, especially Delhi. So, you will see whatever you see at Purana Killa or all that is all transformed, because if you see old pictures, they were never like this. So, they were deliberately given a Mughal touch. So, the attempts to write the history from our perspective was completely nipped in the bud when R.C. Majumdar started his attempt. After that, the rules, we know who were rulers, and we were not allowed to do this.
You were telling that R.C. Majumdar did not give up.
Did not give up. He wrote he documented 3 books, 3 volumes on the history of freedom struggle of India.
Okay.
Right from ancient times to the British times.
Okay. While many people tried to erase our history, there were many archaeologists like Professor B.B. Lal, who was a receiver of Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan, and you also co-authored a book about him, felicitating a legendary archaeologist, Professor B.B. Lal. So, ma'am, what were his contributions in the field of archaeology and how he unearthed the history of Mahabharata?
Okay, so that's a very, very nice question. So I had the fortune of being invited while I was doing research. As I said, I started unearthing. So I started with Kampilya because that is my ancestral land. I have a lot of knowledge. My ancestor has written the book called the Kampil Mahatmya. In our country, we have Mahatmas of every important Tirath. So they're all Tirath, means they were on the banks of the river, is called a Tirath, where places of knowledge. So I was invited to Hastinapur. There's a Shobhit University there to give a talk, and there 2007, I happened to meet Professor Lal, and it turned out to be that he is my neighbor in Hauskas. Okay. And we had a fantastic, interaction, and from then he became the patron of our trust. And that is why I co-authored that book, and he was a patron of our trust. His pioneering work, he was the first archaeologist who in 1951, before we were even born, started the epic archaeology. In the sense, he started excavating places which are written about in our Granth. He started from Hastinapur, and he unearthed certain cultural remains which are common to all places linked to the period of Dwapar. Okay, and then he went into doing even Ramayana period. That means he did many places linked from Hastinapur. He did Indraprasth, then he did Koshambi, because the rulers of the descendants of Pandava actually went and settled there. Buddha had visited Udayan, the descendant of Arjun. So he started doing places of Ramayana also. So his contribution was that he was the first to start excavation on places that are mentioned in our text. Is there any evidence? So at Hastinapur he found dice. He found so many things which were like common, you see. So he wanted to see. Then he linked it with the Puranic, the chronology of rulers also. That were found. And there was a flood mentioned in the Mahabharata. It happened in the times of Nichashku. So that flood, he found remains of a flood happening at Hastinapur, which made them shift to Koshambi. So his work is very, very important, critical for archaeologically proving. Because when you have to get evidence, you have to get evidence from multiple sources. So one of the most important scientific excavation is one of the important things. And we have inscriptions, that is epigraphy, and then there are plants. Plants mentioned in those books are still there. Places mentioned in those books are still there at the same point in which they are described in the book. That is the beauty.
So, ma'am, I want to discuss about Indraprastha, which played a pivotal role in Mahabharata. So, ma'am, how the Pandavas got Indraprastha as a city? How was Indraprastha developed city at that time, and what were the role that Pandav played in that city?
See, let me tell you one thing. First of all, when you said the word that what was the role of Indraprastha in Mahabharata, again you are implying the war. Okay. What was the role of Indraprastha in the Dharma Yudh? The युद्ध is धर्म युद्ध और कुरुक्षेत्र युद्ध. हम कहते हैं ना पानीपत की लड़ाई हुई, हल्दी घाटी की लड़ाई हुई, तो हम ये क्यों नहीं कहते कुरुक्षेत्र की लड़ाई हुई? Why do we say महाभारत? गलत है ना? So what happened is that when the Pandavas grew up and it was time to choose the next generation, the Yuvraj, who will be the next king, Dhritarashtra was very keen that his son Duryodhan become the king, and from childhood he was giving that aspirations to him, because he himself, being the eldest, could not be king, because to be a king you have to have certain physical and mental and intellectual attributes. He did not have the physical attributes because he was blind. So the Pandu became the king. So when the time came, Yudhishthir was the automatic choice, but because Dhritarashtra was very keen his son become, and his son always said, I am the ruler, because I am the son of the ruler, they decided to have a competition. Because in those days, one of the rules of the Bharat Vanshis were that only the capable, having those traits, will become the ruler. So they had this competition in which Duryodhan lost. Technically, Duryodhan is not going to be, should not have been even contesting, because Dhritarashtra was a caretaker king. Now, the caretaker kings cannot rule, son cannot be the ruler, automatic ruler.
Caretaker king, ma'am, how?
He was a caretaker king because when Pandu died, he was given the charge to rule, because there was no other person to rule. Rule was being done by Vidur and Bhishma Pitama, etc. Because Bhishma Pitama had taken pratigya that I will not be the ruler. So the caretaker king was put over there. Okay. So that is why Duryodhan was not the automatic successor. But the fight happened. After he lost the competition to be chosen as the Yuvraj, the next king, he did the horrible thing of trying to burn the Pandavas, kill the Pandavas in the Lakshagrah. So Pandavas escaped and reached Panchal. And then the Swayamvar happens. So that story is different, why the Swayamvar and all, because that's a very important topic also, but we can discuss later. Once the Swayamvar Draupadi accepted the 5 husbands after 10 days of discussions and all that, Dhritarashtra got very worried. He came to know, he got very worried. Why? He said, the Pandavas are very powerful Yodhas. They are more powerful than my son. Secondly, now they have the backing of the largest kingdom, Panchal. Because Kuru and Panchal at one time were same. Later on they divided. So he will have the backing of a large army. So my son will be completely wiped out, and the whole of Kuru will go back to the Pandavas. So he played a trick. He said, let's call them, and he called Yudhishthir and he says, I give you these lands, and now you be at peace, both of you live in peace, he will rule here, you will rule there. Yudhishthir said, okay. So they were giving 5 areas: Bagpat, Sonipat, Tilpat, Panipat and Indrapat. I want to tell you something very interesting about Indrapat now that you asked. Normally people connect Indraprasth being designated as Indraprasth during the Dwapar period. You know the meaning of Dwapar, Treta, etc. So our history is so deep that it is divided into different periods known as Satyug, then
Dwapar.
Treta Yug. Satyug is the Vedic era. Then Treta Yug, where the main focus was Ram. So we identify with Ram and the Treta Yug. Then Dwapar is the period between the Kali Yug and the Treta. So it is second from Satyug. So it is called Dwapar, and when Krishna ruled. So thus the name Indraprasth did not happen during that time. Indraprasth, as per the Narad Puran and many other Purans, was designated Indraprasth during Vedic period when the story of Bhakt Prahlad is saved from that.
Hiranyakashipu.
Yes. That time Brahma gave Indra the Swarg land called Khandavprasth, because Khand ke ped hote the and it needed to be purified. And he told him कि तुम जगह जगह you do yajnas, and when you do yajnas you give prasth भर के, means 24 times 2 hands full daan to the people here, so that they become a part of that and this land gets developed. Prasth also comes from Prasthul, the Sanskrit word plateau. So this land was known as Indra ka Khera or Indra ka Prasth. Now Krishna knew about this. He is an avatar. So he tells the Pandavas that once this land is made on the banks of the Yamuna, this will be called Indraprasth. So initially Indraprasth was this whole jungle area which was being purified by Indra. Later on it became the first Raj, a designated kingdom known as Indraprasth, and they also called their Rajdhani Indraprasth. Like today we have Delhi as a state and Delhi as a city, the capital city. In the same way we had Indraprasth the kingdom, and Indraprasth kingdom see, in olden days it was always Hastinapur was known as Hastinapur, though it was the capital of this thing, but it was people referred Dwarka. So वो इसका नाम इंद्रप्रस्थ तब पड़ा. Now Indraprasth का role ये हुआ that once Indraprasth was created, it was the first urbanized settlement in North India, and it has been described as a Swarg land, as beautiful as Amravati. It had very well planned roads at cross sections, straight lines, hexagonals, and it has trees all over. So it had designated areas for the people who are scholars, for people who are traders, people who are artisans, people who are into spirituality, and area which is for the rulers. Okay. So this is what happened is, that is why Sonipat is from Sunar, Kahar, Lohar. Panipat is the area where the traders stayed. Bagpat was the area of the spirituality. Tilpat was more the area of the agricultural land, and Indraprasth was the ruling place. Jiska Purana Killa was the main gad, but of course it was spread all over. Even the iron pillar dates back to 900 plus BC. People don't know that. We go by British 900 BC. And the people here say that it is, thoda der, the AD mein kahin aa jata hai. So Indraprasth, now the question that you asked, I wanted to give this background, how important a place Indraprasth was. First urbanized settlement, well planned. Britishers, when they were making New Delhi, have followed the plan of Indraprasth. It is mentioned in their book. So Indraprasth became a very beautiful, a very flourishing and a very prosperous kingdom. Then Yudhishthir, once it was ready, had to be anointed as the king. So the Raj Abhishek was happening. The Mahabharata, the book, the Granth describes 100 plus most prominent kings from across the continents came for this with the Yuvrajas, and they were like so enamored of the whole place that everybody was praising. So was Duryodhan invited, and his Shakuni Mama invited, and they were not elated, they were jealous. As usual, Duryodhan was, his jealousy, his anger, his frustration at not being like the Pandavas became heightened when he saw this beauty. And he decided, I am going to get it by hook or by crook. So his uncle tells him, जाके देखो महल, वो जाके देखता है, and the more he sees, and then he falls by mistake, mistaking the pool to be a carpet. He falls into that. But so the importance of Indraprastha was so much that the whole world of that time and whole world, much centuries and centuries, this whole of Southeast Asia, the Jambu Deep and other dupes looked up to it because it was created on the lines of re-establishing dharma. What is dharma? Rule of law, principles of living, principles of governance, principles of interaction, principles of economy. See, even trade was done. आज भी हमारे यहाँ आप गाँव में जाओगे ना, जो कांटा होता है जिसे तौलते हैं, उसको धर्म कांटा बोलते हैं. That means हम आपसे cheating नहीं करेंगे, not like today's things. So since it was established on the principles of dharma, Pandavas fought for dharma, that is rule of law, principles of life, good governance on the basis. So it became a center of attraction, a beacon of light for the whole world. And that is why it retained its importance for centuries and centuries. Carl Stephen, he is one of the historians, mentions it also in his book, that Indraprastha regained its importance for centuries after the Pandavas' rule. And I have a list of rulers right from Yudhishthir till Yashpal, covering 124 kings in that 4,130 years, each of an age of approximately 33 age, average age लगाते हैं ना कि भाई इतने सारे rulers थे, क्या average age थी. So the whole Indraprastha importance lies as the first, as I said, urbanized settlement, center of art and culture. We had fantastic, I mean the Iron Pillar is a testimony also for later generation, it happened, but they were also Vanshaj of, Harshvardhan was the Vanshaj of the Pandavas.
Iron Pillar is Qutub Minar, ma'am.
Qutub Minar is divided. Iron Pillar is the Loha Sthamb at Qutub Minar, but the Qutub Minar, जो Qutub Minar बाद में बोला गया है, basically it is a astronomical laboratory established by Varahamir, one of the leading astronomers like Vedvyas. So it had 27 nakshatra temples, because when they were teaching astronomy, they would talk about the nakshatras. And that whole pillar was the observatory where they would climb up and see. Later on the Mughals came and, as I said, the transformations had started happening, So this city became, Indraprastha was important politically, economically. You won't believe that till 1948 we have references of navigation on river Yamuna from Kolkata to Delhi. It was such an important place. So it was economically important, it was strategically important, being at the center of this whole Jambu Deep concept, and it was important because it followed the rule of law. It gave an example of rule of law. So that is why it has always been important, and today we are regaining that importance, because if you realize that if you have been good, maybe some people may try to defame you. थोड़ा इधर कोई कुछ बोलेगा, कोई कुछ बोलेगा, लेकिन आपकी जो सच्चाई है, सोना तब के ही जाके चमकता है. Today Delhi is again back, and people are looking up to Delhi because we have followed a line of rule where we have taken everybody together. It is the only country which is treating everybody as equals. So that is why people are after us, and so Duryodhan was after this.
But Indraprastha is a forgotten city. Means the young generation does not know about it. So why it is not taught in our history books and in the schools about Indraprastha? And is it a part of Delhi, Indraprastha?
Okay, so as I just told you, Indraprastha, the whole kingdom was almost half of Kuru Janpad, Kuru kingdom. So it consisted of vast areas covering Panipat today, Sonipat, Bagpat, Tilpat, this whole area. Then idhar ye hamara pura ye Khandaprastha, pura New Delhi area. And in that, at that time, you see the nomenclatures have differed. We did not have a state called Rajasthan or a Gujarat or a Madhya Pradesh or a Uttarakhand, etc. We didn't have all that. Ghaziabad was a part of it, Noida was a part of it. So there was these huge lands. We still have names of villages mentioned in the book of Granth Mahabharat, which are existing here today. So it was what I would say that why we do not know, first of all, is that we do not know the geography. We have our Indraprasth Mahatma, which I am translating now into English and Hindi. The Mahatma of each place I told you there is, which tells you the Ayodhya judgment also happened on the basis of Ayodhya Mahatma. The Mahatma documents the important historical places of that area, its geography, and the rulers. So the Indraprasth Mahatma tells us it was so vast that the northwest border was only 20 kilometers from Kashi. It was so huge. Then why it is not taught in our books? Because as I said, what happened is, two things happened. When Harshvardhan was ruling, that time he could not be at all the places. So Indraprastha, he said, I will be the Angpal, like the governor, lieutenant governor, hum log aajkal bolte na, I'll be the Angpal. And then his Vanshas later on started rulers here, the Tomars. They also acquired the name of Angpal. So Angpal, Anangpal 1, Anangpal 2, Anangpal 3, we come to know. Na? Angpal is basically caretakers. Okay. Now the name, what happened is, one of the Anangpals, that is 2, his name was Dhelu. Dhelu, when he came here, तो उसके जो subordinates थे, and Dhelu wanted थोड़ा सा कुछ अपना नया देखने के लिए ना, so he says he wants that iron, उसको उसके किसी साधु ने कह दिया कि ये जो जगह है ये इतनी महत्वपूर्ण है कि यहाँ जो रूल करता है वो इसी लोहे स्तंभ की तरह स्टैब्लिश हो जाता है और ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. Yes. So what he said, he wanted to see the strength of that iron pillar. There's a lot of poetry also written, and all, even Alexander Cunningham, the archaeologist, and Carl Stephen, they all mentioned. So Dhelu wanted to see the depth of that thing, pillar. And he called those people to remove. And they said कि इसके नीचे, साधु told me, इसके जो शेष नाग हैं वो इसकी रक्षा करते हैं. You see, when we do Vastu, we actually create the symbol of a snake. Okay. Because underground snakes रहते हैं ना. So Vastu is, so this is कि Vastu बहुत strong है. He wanted to see it. The moment they take out, they saw a lot of blood. So he got scared. He said, नहीं इसको ठीक रखो, वापस रखो. When they were refixing, one of the nails could not be fixed properly, so it became dhili. So then it became popular, oh Dhelu ki killi dhilli, killi dhilli, killi dhilli, and as a nickname, it started becoming popular. So that area, that is the Mehrauli area, started being known as Dilli, 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 Dilli ka, Dilli, Dilli. Uske pehle it was known as Yoginipura, because वहाँ कृष्ण की बहन योग माया का मंदिर है. वो मंदिर अभी भी है. Yoginipura. Okay, so they started being Dilli, Dilli, Dilli. Now, what happens is that if one person's popular name, the nickname becomes popular and easy to pronounce. So everybody started saying Dilli, 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 Dilli. But Dilli was that little tiny area actually, you know, not the whole of this. So anyway, so Dilli became popular and everybody started using. But if you see the medieval literature, I mean the history books, Ain-e-Akbari of Abul Fazl, he says Humayun came and settled at Indraprasth. So everybody talks of Indraprasth. In formal language, it was Indraprasth. Formal language में दिल्ली कहीं कहीं कुतुब मतलब ये कुतुब वाला कुतुबुद्दीन के टाइम पे मेंशन थोड़ा हुआ है, because by that time that area had become famous. And then Mughal time पे थोड़ा थोड़ा कहीं होता था, but basically they were, because see they wanted to show that they have conquered Indraprasth, so they mentioned the real name. So gradually the name Dilli became popular and Indraprasth started betting, because as I said that the history of Bharat, the itihas of Bharat was being erased. So one of the reasons to erase the Bharat ka itihas was to erase the names also. Na? So Delhi became popular, and then the Britishers also played their fantastic game. They called this whole year New Delhi, and they did the whole of Indraprasth ka map, 1877 map, the records. revenue records. What was the population? Everything is there in the, there is in DDA, there is a section called the Imperial City Records. वहाँ पे ये सारी information रखी हुई है. That it was still known as Indraprasth. Now we have inscriptions we have found in Narayana. Inscription we have found at Rashtrapati Bhavan के पास एक छोटा सा गांव है Sarban village. So those stone inscriptions talking about clearly mentioning Indraprasth. Now Haryana was changing times names. कभी वो पंजाब में जाता था, कभी इधर. Punjab was also a later name, isn't it? Panch Ab. So Indraprasth became submerged because of political reasons, because they wanted to submerge the itihas of Bharat. So Bharat also was not known, na? जैसे भारत को दबाया गया वैसे इंद्रप्रस्थ को दबाया गया. And today Indraprasth they talk, I mean fortunately there are notifications and government gazetteers mentioning Indraprasth and Mughal records mentioning Indraprasth. So we can authenticate. And Britishers casually mention. In fact, it was Carl Stephens through whom I came to know when I was reading his book that there's something called the Indraprasth Mahatma existed. It took me 4 years to find that Indraprasth Mahatma. Because our books have been destroyed, they have been lost and deliberately submerged. I mean, I know people who take a book because it's important and they quickly destroy it because किसी को इसकी knowledge नहीं मिल जाए. So we have been victims of political strategies and but what they say, हमारा जो motto है ना सत्यमेव जयते. So whatever is the truth will come out sooner or later. और ये जो हमारे we are a civilization. We are not a religious people. We believe in civilization. And civilization means culture. हमारे यहाँ तो एक और theory है ना कि Aryan invasion. अरे कहाँ से invasion? Aryans तो हम हैं. We are Thet Aryans. My family is Aryan. I have a history ranging from the time of my Vanshavali comes from Ram के 9th वंशज. नहीं, Ram के 10th, Kush के 9th.
Okay.
So there were 2 brothers. So from one of the brothers, our history is coming. So we were the Aryans. Aryan means, the Arya word means the civilized person. जैसे अंग्रेजी में कहते हैं ना gentleman.
But ऐसा कहते हैं कि Aryans बाहर से आए थे.
It's all nonsense. It's all. See, as I said, na, if I have to rule over you, I have to show I civilized you. I have to tell you I developed you. I have to tell you your history. You don't know how to write history. I just told you we are the only people who documented history. Not only documented history in what sense? Aryavarte, Jambudvipe, Bharat Khande, Indraprasth Deshe. Then you give the date, every family's history, every king's history, every Vansha. I have a Vanshavali, I told you, from Yudhishthira till now. And we have calendar systems whenever a new king takes. So we have a Yudhishthira calendar, we have a Samvat calendar, we have 2 Saka calendars. Problem has come is, there was a Meghnad Saha committee made. And our one whole Saka period of 700 years have been removed.
Meghnad Saha committee.
Meghnad Saha was made by Nehru to restructure the calendar system. Because see, why we celebrate 1st April, do you know? Because the whole world celebrated New Year on the Chaitra month. Okay, so they still remember and they used to remember this. But बाद में इन्होंने अपने kings के नाम से January कर दिया, Janus के नाम से.
Financial year of first.
Financial year उन्होंने कर दिया ना. So to adjust, to their dates of 4000 BC, which is mostly 100% incorrect, our calendar was issued. So when I compare Mughal calendar and our calendar, Indian calendar, we match. Even the Mughal history calendar and our calendar matches. It is only after the British came that the change came. इसीलिए मैं कह रही हूँ कि I am giving you the date of Iron Pillar from Farishta. He is a Persian historian. But we are not taught that. नहीं, कैसे दिखाएंगे, कहाँ दिखाएंगे? Because we have to follow what the Britishers are saying. Why? But thankfully there are lot number of foreigners, lot number of Americans who are now realizing that a mistake has been made. and they are understanding our thing. I mean, you read Mark Twain so beautifully. He said, in the books of Bharat, a civilization spoke, and they're given answers to questions which are all troubling us today. So we should go back to that.
Ma'am, these historical narratives are also relevant in today's world, and I believe that they should be told to the younger generation. And ma'am, do you think that they will be implemented in further in the education policy?
See, 2-3 things we must understand. Even a country like Saudi Arabia has introduced the study of Ramayana and Mahabharata in their books. Why are we not doing that?
Yes.
We have to do it as history, not as a story, number one. Number two, as famously said by so many, Churchill's is famous, that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. If our politicians had read the Mahabharata, our country would never have been divided into India and Pakistan, because they had seen that when Kuru land was divided into Hastinapur and Indraprasth, what happened? There was no peace. There was only war. There was destruction. Same thing happened when Pakistan was made. So division is not a solution, and history will have to teach you. So you have to know your history. Today's generation, why they have to know history? Because they have to understand that we are a civilization, we are a people of culture. And where does our culture come from? प्रकृति से हमारी संस्कृति आती है, जो हम वासुदेव कुटुंब. Today we are fighting for climate change. Why? Because we have neglected our nature. We have neglected understanding that we have to live in tune with the 5 elements, जिससे nature बना है, जिससे हम बने. So today's generation has to know the history, because they have to get back their pride of the knowledge that they have within their genes. Only when you realize that it is in your genes will you be excited to get there. But if you are always told कि तुम बचपन से बच्चे को तुम तो बेवकूफ़ हो, तुम तो बेवकूफ़ हो, तुम तो इडियट हो, तो वो बेचारे अपने आप को इडियट ही समझेंगे ना. तो हमें तो शुरू से इडियट बनाया गया. It is time we teach them that we were never idiots. We were always warriors. It is out of force, out of, because we believe everybody is the same. We were fooled. So it is time we woke up. That is what Krishna taught us. That Kshatriya Dharma Nibhana. You see, in our Ved, there is a very interesting shloka which tells us what are the 4 varnas. We have been misled into thinking we are this caste, that caste. हमारे कोई caste system नहीं था. हमारे यहाँ women को इतना high status दिया जाता था. Kunti was a widow. See her high status. And they say, oh, you all ill-treat widows. Arey, we never ill-treated widows. You put us in parda. You started taking away our widows, killing our soldiers and taking away our widows. That's why our widows were hidden and sheltered. Okay, so there are so many aspects, but today's generation, when they know the real history, how powerful women were, how equal women were, what is the meaning of Shakti? What is the meaning of Shakti? Is the energy that moves the world. So, if they know the correct history, they will know the correct Vigyan, that is science. They will also know what is their strength. And when they know their strength, it will give them that power to be one of the sort of vehicles for making our nation or more great. Because today we are demoralized. We think we are nobody. We are not nobody. We are somebody. And we have to realize, as I said, now you have to build your own assets. We are full of assets. Genetically, we are people of assets. We were tuned into being white collar and blue collar jobs. We gave away our entrepreneur. Every Indian was an entrepreneur. Every Bharatiya was an entrepreneur. And this whole concept about, as I said, caste and Sood and all that, there is a very interesting teaching towards the end, after when the war is finished. Bhishma Pitama is lying on his sesha. Krishna Bhagwan says कि भाई आप युधिष्ठिर, आप भीष्म पितामह से ज्ञान लो, राजधर्म का ज्ञान लो. So Bhishma Pitama tells him something so simple. He tells him that you need good consultants, you need Brahmans. people who will give you the right type of advice. So have few best chosen ones. You need a good army. You need Kshatriyas to protect your boundaries and protect your people. So you need Kshatriyas. For maintaining the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins, you need money. So you need good Vaishyas. That means who will do good trading. So you have to give them, facilitate them. Roads. You know, we used to have Uttarapat, Dakshinapat, जिसको बाद में वो GT road बना दिया और ये road बना दिया, उसका नाम दे दिया. We still have an inscription of Ashoka talking about the Indrapat. So you need Kshatriyas. Then you need, what will the Kshatriyas, what will the Vaishya trade? They will trade goods and services. Goods basically. Where will the goods come from? The Shudras. The Shudras were the working people, the MSME, today's MSME, the household industries, and Vaishyas were the industrialists. Okay. So army was the Kshatriyas. Consultants were the Brahmans. Okay. So, and it is in each individual's system, the Rig Veda says that our brain is our Brahman, our hands are our Kshatriya, our stomach is our Vaishya because it makes us work for food to survive, and our legs are our Shudras because it makes us do the leg work. So, already it is described in the Vedas that a person has 4 qualities. Those 4 qualities, when you go for the brahmacharya, for education, which is your core quality, gets activated. And then you take that line. But that doesn't mean you are small or big, because you are an equal part in the cycle of development. Okay. So these are things which, if today's generation comes to know, these simple facts of life. Of course, thankfully, the Bhagavad Gita has been now very much propagated as the management tool. Krishna's presentation as an envoy of peace, see, till the end he tried for peace, is a fantastic example of how to make a presentation.
Ma'am, every person learns from Bhagavad Gita differently. So ma'am, you have researched about Mahabharata. So what are your key learnings that you took from Bhagavad Gita?
As I just told you, the key learnings from Bhagavad Gita is that you have to be a karma yogi. You have to do your karma with the best of your abilities and the best of your knowledge, so that you are able to achieve maximum out of your own assets, your own knowledge and all your own attributes, and contribute to the society. So whatever you do comes back to you. The world is round. God has made the world round, so whatever you throw will come back to you, go round and come back to you. There is a gravity in the center of the earth. So whatever you throw will fall on you. So if you throw a flower, the flower will fall on you. If you throw a stone, the stone will follow you. So what I have learned from the Bhagavad Gita is that you have to be a karma yogi. You have to do your maximum best efforts to do something, but the outcome is not in your hands. See, when the accident happened and I was grounded for 6 months, I could have been cribbing and crying, what is happening to me? But no, Krishna gave me that strength, that there is a good hidden in everything. Whatever has happened is for some good. See the good in it, see the positive part of it, that you are able to relax for 6 months and rewind yourself and decide what more you can do, how you can use whatever you have regret. Because my eyes were affected, you see. So I have learned from the Bhagavad Gita that हमारा पुरुषार्थ के जो 4 अंग हैं, अर्थ, काम, धर्म, मोक्ष, इसको अगर हम फॉलो करते हैं to the best of your ability, then only I am a worthwhile human being. हमें एक पुरुषार्थ बनना है, हमें एक आदर्श व्यक्ति बन के जीना है, जिससे कि हम ईश्वर की दी हुई जो हमारे पास धरोहरें हैं, उनका सदुपयोग करके और उसी धरती को हम वापस करें. This is what I have learned from the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, कृष्ण की कृपा है मेरे ऊपर, तो मैं बहुत भाग्यशाली हूँ. I am very, very fortunate. And I feel that, as you said, the younger generation has to get into it. thank God for the social media.
हम्म।
Thank God for the social media.
आज आपके साथ मैम ये ऐसे कन्वर्सेशन करके बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला एंड आई होप कि हम फ्यूचर में और टॉपिक्स के बारे में कन्वर्सेशन कर पाए.
I would like to, one day discuss Draupadi with you because
Yes,
she's the most. She never said Draupadi. She never said Andhe ka beta, and she never said this. She was not even present at the point where Duryodhan fell. So if she was not present there, how can you say she laughed at him and she said Andhe ka beta Andha? The book Mahabharat Granth Sabha Parv of Indraprasth mentions this whole episode of the Rajsui Yagna and the guests coming, and Draupadi was a fantastic management person. There is a dialogue between Satyabhama and Draupadi where she asks her, how do you manage 5 husbands? How do you manage this kingdom? Because she's the Rajrani. Then she talks about the way she explains, brings out her financial management, time management, interpersonal skills, human management. And even at that time, she was managing the whole place. So logically, you see, she's going to be the first Maharani of Indraprasth. She's going to sit with with Yudhishthir to be at the Rajaswi Yagya. She's going to welcome all the VIPs. Do you think she's going to take around a evil Devar to come see my mahal? She was not there. The Granth mentions that when Bhim came to know that Duryodhan had fallen, he said 3 words. He said, Hey Dhritarashtraputra. Indirectly, he gave a sarcastic remark, which from childhood they had that enmity. So he would make a child. But nowhere does Draupadi say this. Duryodhan has created a ploy and he wants to denigrate because he knows that hit Draupadi, then you hit the 5 Pandavas, you demoralize them. But they are stronger. They are made of better metal. They have who on their side? Krishna. Remember, he goes to ask Duryodhan, मुझे अपनी सेना दे दो, नारायणी सेना. मुझे नारायणी सेना नहीं चाहिए, मुझे तो नारायण चाहिए. तो मेरी लाइफ में मुझे तो नारायण चाहिए और उसकी भगवद गीता चाहिए. वो मेरी स्ट्रेंथ है.
वेरी वेल सेड मैम. और इसके साथ मैं होप करता हूँ कि फ्यूचर में हम द्रौपदी जी और पंचकन्या के ऊपर भी एक बातचीत करें. एंड थैंक यू वेरी मच.
माय प्लेजर.
नॉलेज दी और अपना टाइम आपने हमें निकाल के दिया कि हमारे साथ ये बातचीत करने के लिए.
Thank you, and I'm so happy that I hope I'm able to cover as much as you wanted. Yes, but yes, there is always a future, and all the best for your great efforts. I'm really very excited that young people like you are taking interest in topics which have been lost and forgotten, and not only that, they have been misrepresented. So the Mahabharata is a great book of knowledge. It is the story of the Virat Bharat that followed principles of dharma.
Thank you, ma'am.